In this reflection, we continue our exploration of the Noahide laws by looking at one of the most unusual and least understood commandments, the prohibition against cursing God. What did this law mean in the world where it first appeared, and does it still have anything to say to us today? Let us take a calm and thoughtful look at its origins, its purpose, and its modern relevance. The prohibition against cursing God is perhaps the most unfamiliar of the Noahide laws for modern people. It feels ancient, almost like an echo from a world where religion, society, and language worked in completely different ways. But if we go back to the time when this law was formed, we see that it points to something deeper than simple words or emotions. To curse God was not a spontaneous expression of frustration or doubt. In the ancient Near East, a curse was a ritual and a legal act. It was a form of speech that was believed to have power. When someone spoke certain formulas, it could dissolve an oath, break loyalty, separate a person from the foundation of the community, and even call destructive forces into action. A curse directed at God was therefore a conscious, public, and performative act. It did not mean that a deity could be offended. It meant that the speaker rejected the highest moral principle that held the community together. In a world where oaths, truth, and justice were anchored in the name of God, a ritual curse meant breaking with all of this. It was a declaration that one no longer recognized any ethical obligation, any higher authority, or any foundation for justice. That is why it was considered a serious offense. Not because God was threatened, but because society was. Such an act could undermine the moral structure that people depended on. It is important to understand that this ancient act was completely different from criticism, doubt, or protest. Jewish tradition has a long history of questioning, arguing, and even expressing anger toward God. The Hebrew Bible itself contains laments, accusations, and outbursts of frustration. These were never considered violations, because they came from within a living relationship. The law against cursing does not refer to this kind of speech. It refers to a deliberate public act of contempt meant to tear down the sacred center of the community. For this reason, the prohibition does not apply to atheism, scientific criticism, philosophical skepticism, or ordinary expressions of anger. None of these resemble the ritual act that the law originally addressed. When we ask what this law could mean today, we find ourselves in a completely different cultural world. People no longer swear legal oaths in God's name, and no social structure depends on religious formulas. Yet some aspects of the law remain surprisingly relevant, even if the form has changed. The power of symbolic language is still present. We still see acts that use the sacred to provoke, to divide, or to humiliate. Modern examples include the burning of holy books for political purposes, the use of sacred symbols as tools for provocation, and the rise of online hostility where people attack religious texts not to understand them, but to ridicule and degrade them. On social media, we often see what could be called an intellectual form of book burning, quoting sacred texts out of context for the sole purpose of generating contempt. Technically, none of this is a violation of the original Noahide command. But ethically, these actions echo the same destructive impulse. They express a kind of ritualized contempt that harms not only a belief system, but the human beings who identify with it. They treat the sacred as a target, not for thoughtful criticism, but for intentional humiliation. In this sense, the ancient law serves as a reminder that language can still break down social trust when it is used in destructive ways. We live in a time when freedom of expression is essential, and it must remain so. Criticizing religion must be allowed. Asking hard questions must be allowed. Taking a personal stand against one's former beliefs must be allowed. But there is still a moral difference between criticism that seeks understanding and contempt that seeks destruction. The prohibition against cursing God can therefore be understood today as an ethical call. Do not use what others hold sacred as a weapon. Do not build a community on contempt. Do not let the power of words become a tool for dehumanizing or shaming others. The law is not primarily a theological requirement. It is a reminder of respect, responsibility, and maturity in the way we speak and act. It recognizes that the sacred, where sacred is, whether we understand it theologically or not, touches something deep in human identity and dignity. And even though the ritual itself has disappeared, The need for this reminder may be greater now than ever. Thank you for listening to this reflection from the Yeshua community. If you have additions, clarifications, or corrections, please share them in the comments. The Yeshua community would be grateful for your contributions, and they help us continue these conversations with honesty, humility, and depth.